Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to the April 24th, 2025 meeting of the Baltimore City Planning Commission. I'm John Lario, the Commission Chair. For those keeping track, it's also meeting number 2071, which began in biblical times, apparently. Seated next to me is Chris Ryer, our Planning Director and Executive Secretary. Mr. Executive Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Thank you. Robin Allen.
Present.
The Honorable John Bullock.
Present.
Christine Griffin.
Present.
Talib Horn is not present today. Claudio Jolin.
Present.
Douglas McCoach.
Present.
Justin Williams.
Present.
Eric Stevenson.
Present.
And John Laria.
Present. Okay. Next item on the agenda, the approval of minutes from April 3rd, posted to the Commissioners' Wix sites. Is there a motion to approve those minutes for posting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Before we move to the consent agenda, I just want to alert or advise the Commission and others who may be interested of what is really some sad news of which some may be aware. Marcia Collins, former longtime commissioner on this commission, passed away with some time within the last few weeks. I know she was quite ill. I think many people knew she was quite ill, and she retired or resigned from the commission accordingly. As someone who has been in around this commission in different roles, although not a commissioner, have always appreciated her encyclopedic knowledge of DPW and the way the city works and her incredible practicality. I think I remember many times where Marcia was able to cut through complicated issues by framing it and by explaining what the city had done previously or maybe what the city could or couldn't do. So it's a very sad bit of news to convey. One thing I wanted to ask is I think it would be appropriate for the commission to at least consider how it might honor her memory. I was thinking, perhaps some sort of a recognition of a city employee somewhere in the city, maybe the non-planning departments, and she was not a planning department member who had contributed to the work of the commission and the kinds of things that we try to do. It's one thought. What I'm going to ask is for folks who would like to, from the commission, who might be interested in volunteering to think about that and maybe make a short presentation discussion to the commission, to reach out to Chris Ryer, and sometime we'll figure out a way to do that. And there are lots of different opportunities. I know other things are being considered at DPW and in the city, but I think in view of her long service here, it would be nice to think of a way that the commission could honor her work and her memory. So thank you for that. Also remind the commissioners that after the meeting, we are going to have an administrative session that will be closed to the public for some personnel matters. So please make sure you make yourself available for that. And with that, I'll turn to the consent agenda. The first consent agenda item is CIP transfers. I'm looking at them. They're on the Commissioner's Wix site. Normally, I've gotten into the habit of reading these. I think in this instance, I will not, because they are just cleanup transfers in Workday as discussed at the prior meeting. I want to make sure that's correct. I think that's what I'm seeing. Sarah, is that an accurate?
Not sure I would say just.
I don't mean just, but I think I don't think we're going to. Well, go ahead, Sarah. Why don't you remind her? We've been spending a lot of time on this, and I think it's worth everybody keeping track of what is really an extraordinary project to clean all this up. So maybe you can just talk for a moment about what's represented here on the.
There are 5 items that are the cleanup items that were the subject of the previous briefing, and then there's one that is one list of transfers that is more similar to what the commission routinely sees. And I can just review for you what those 5 cleanup items are.
Yeah, I think it's worth. I really do think it's worth a little bit of visibility on these. So please, let's do that.
So one is deappropriations of state and federal funds where there are appropriations on the city books that do not have revenue to back them up. So we're doing a cleanup process to remove those appropriations that do not have revenue to back them up. And so those are deappropriations, and it's limited just to state and federal appropriations at this time. There are four groups of transfers, and they're just organized by category. So one is transfers from reserve cost centers to active cost centers that are for the same project, but there are multiple PRJs, which is the accounts. There's multiple accounts that exist in our system in Workday for that purpose, and so we're consolidating them, essentially moving from the project that's in the reserve cost center to the project that's in the active cost center. So that's one set of transfers that you see, and then parallel to that, there's another set of transfers where we're moving from projects that are in active cost centers to projects that are in active cost centers. But again, where it's the same purpose, the same project, where we're really consolidating balances. There's another set of transfers that are focused on resolving deficits. So we have some projects in Workday that currently have deficits, and some of those deficits are being corrected by agencies going through and looking at transactions and making sure that the transactions are properly charged to the right account. But where that's not been the issue, there are transfers that are needed to address those deficits. So that's what you see in that set of transfers. And then the last one is a variety of other transfers. So that might be where a project is complete and it had a remaining balance, and so we're moving that balance into another project where a project is inactive, and we're moving appropriations into an active project, or where there's maybe very similar projects, but they weren't the same, where we're doing consolidations of balances. So those are the types of cleanups that you see in that last item.
Thanks. And altogether, that's hundreds of items, so obviously I will not be reading them. But the commission has heard about these, and we've had a full conversation. This is really just the action item, so there's no need to go back over them. But it is part of this larger evolving process to more accurately track capital projects, which is of tremendous interest to us. So, okay, so thank you for that. Are there any questions about these that were not addressed by the commission or for the commission at the prior session? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the CIP transfers?
Move CIP transfer.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. I don't think we have anything else before we get to the next consent agenda item. Is that correct, Mr. Tissot?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Executive Secretary, consent agenda item number 4, if you will.
City Council Bill number 25-0049, a release of access easement for vehicular access to US Route 40 through 6709 Pulaski Highway, the 2nd Councilmatic District.
I'm happy to provide a little bit of background on this one. I'm actually not 100% certain why the bill was referred to the Planning Commission. It's not a street closing, which we would normally see, but it is merely an easement that has been across this property for quite some time. The access has never been exercised because there's a railroad that blocks the path through this property to city-owned lots on the other side of the tracks. So since the easement has never been exercised by the city, it's acceptable to release that. And just the way it came to us, it was faster to put it before you on the consent agenda than to ask for its reassignment.
Are there any questions of the staff on this? If not, is there a motion to approve item number 4?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, number 5 on the consent agenda, minor subdivision final plans. I'm sorry, I'm doing your speech for you.
For 623 through 625 South Luzerne Avenue in the 1st Councilmatic District. It's subdividing a lot that was consolidated and now re-subdividing on the same lot line.
And this has been posted to the Wix site. Commissioner had a chance to review it.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move to the regular agenda. Mr. Executive Secretary.
Okay. The first item on the regular agenda is a pretty exciting project at Tivoli Eco Village, PUD, Concept Plan Review, 14th Councilmatic District. Caitlin Aldette will present.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Today I have to present to you the concept review for the Tivoli Eco Village Planned Unit Development. My name is Caitlin Aldette. The petitioner here is Urban Green LLC, who's also the owner. This is in the Northern Planning District, for which Marie McSweeney Anderson is the community planner. So first I'm going to provide a little bit of background on the PUD process, as this is the first new PUD since the zoning code was updated in 2017. So new planned unit developments must follow a 4-step process. The initial step, the preliminary consultation, is meeting with the planning department. The development team did this for the Tivoli Eco Village on March 6th of this year. The second step is where we are today. This is the concept plan. I apologize for the very small text here. Just wanted to not have it be too long. So after the preliminary consultation, the applicant must file a concept plan with the planning director for the purpose of obtaining information and guidance from the planning commission before the applicant enters into binding commitments or incurs substantial expense. The code provides specific requirements of what must be included in the plan, including a site plan, schematic drawings of the proposed buildings, a written statement that includes an explanation of the PUD, proposed exceptions, and proposed public benefits and amenities. The commission is tasked with providing guidance. The advice provided by the commission during this time is not binding. Okay, so I'm going to jump now to the actual proposal. So the properties.
Just to be clear, I did read the code on the subject. Not binding means not binding not only on others, but even on ourselves. Because if it should come back to us in a form that is ready for final approval, we are not sort of stuck with comments that were offered. This is purely an advisory discussion, correct?
Yes, correct.
Thanks.
So the properties in question are currently vacant lots. The row homes formerly on the site were demolished by the city, and you can see them here. The properties are located within the Coldstream Homestead Montebello community, which is bound by 33rd Street to the north, Harford Road to the east, the Alameda to the south and west. And the properties are in close proximity to Lake Montebello, Clifton Park, and City College. The 2024 Comprehensive Master Plan of the city included the subject property as designated residential lower density within the general land use plan. This proposed development generally conforms with this designation, which includes R1 through R4. The proposed PUD is within the Coldstream Homestead Montebello Urban Renewal Plan and will need to meet the requirements within that plan for design of new construction. The current proposal appears to meet these standards. The proposed PUD will be composed of 100 net zero energy, single-family detached and semi-detached dwellings, community green space, and a multi-purpose building designated for community use. A portion of the dwellings will front on Tivoli, Hugo, and East 28th Street. The rest of the dwellings will be located along internal mews. All of the properties will have access to an alley. The neighborhood is intended as a next-generation sustainable community featuring rooftop-mounted solar systems, a community microgrid with energy storage capability, a modern stormwater management design, and an abundance of community green space. The proposal includes several different property types. Each building includes a carport or garage, and several will include a second story above the garage that could be utilized as additional housing through an ADU. This is shown in detached type A. and an ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. The master plan for the project has gone to UDEP and is still in this completing design review. So everything we're seeing here is still in that initial stage, but is at such a level that the planning staff felt comfortable bringing it to the commission at this time. The properties are currently zoned R6 and would need substantial zoning relief, including for the minimum lot area, maximum lot coverage, interior side lot, corner side yard, and rear yard. The team has identified the following public benefits, which include green homeownership opportunities, improved walkability, and reactivation of vacant land, among others. The Coldstream Homestead Montebello Community Group has been notified of the action, and they have been an active stakeholder in the proposed redevelopment. So there's no action necessary at this time. As we stated, the commission can make recommendations. Some potential items for discussion that the staff has put forth include an expiration date for the PUD. We've found that to be problematic when there is none on other PUDs. Allowable dimensions for rear decks, again, something that staff has found would be useful because then decks don't have to come to planning commission, right? And that's not a useful, that's not a use of planning commission's time, good use. As well as minor changes to carports reviewed at staff level. So kind of wanting to push those minor items away from planning commission and to the staff. And that's it. Any questions?
Members of the commission, questions for Caitlin? Mr. Vice Chair, please.
Caitlin, thank you. It's a wonderful project, and I hope that it will be a model that could be replicated in other parts of the city. My one question, this isn't really a question, it's a comment since we're giving feedback. The side yards. So I'm all for the density that this would create, but those 4-foot side yards, in my view, as a person who lives in a row house community, create like a maintenance, in some cases, a safety issue. But also, you know, I know this is very conceptual. It's shown as green. I imagine that's intended to be grass. You know, grass doesn't grow in a 4-foot alley. And what has happened in all of our row house communities is those alleys get paved, and this being an eco-village, you know, thinking about what that material would be so it doesn't end up as concrete, I think is just feedback I would offer.
That was the biggest item that was reviewed at UDEP. And so, yes, we anticipate that that will be addressed before this comes back for its master plan review. But it is definitely something that has been discussed with the applicant, and we anticipate that it will be addressed.
Yes, Commissioner McCoach.
I'm just wondering, how will the open space? Is there an entity that works with the owners, and is this managed in sort of a condominium style?
I'll defer to the owner, but I believe it's going to be an HOA style.
Because I assume.
Your microphone, I'm sorry.
Sorry. I assume then that the standards that are documented in the design can then be maintained through this HOA.
But that's the intention.
Are we also hearing from an applicant today, or are you making the presentation?
So I am making the presentation from staff, but the applicant is here. I also know that Councilwoman Ramos is here, as well as community members. So there's a lot of voices to be heard here if you'd like to hear them.
Well, are there, just so we can sort of organize this discussion, are there folks who wish to testify? Remember, there's not a vote today on an approval, so it's not influencing a decision, yes or no, or anything of that sort. It's really just input. If there's input that folks here would like to have so that the commission can hear it and maybe incorporate it, but, you know, it's not a one bite at the apple situation, I guess, is to be frank. But if there are there folks from the community who want to, with that sort of context, who do want to be heard today? Please just raise your hand so I know. Yeah, I'll get to the applicant. Okay. The applicant presumably wants to be heard since it's raising its hand. And Councilwoman, of course, if you were interested in speaking, we'd be happy to hear from you. Why don't we hear from the applicant next, if that's okay? And you can come and add additional information and we'll work our way through it. I'm sorry, I couldn't see. Okay, well, that's fine. So let's hold that. Let's hear from the applicant, and then we'll be sure that anybody who wants to be heard gets to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking time for schedule to see us today and from hearing from us. I'm Mark James. I am the President Managing Member for Urban Green LLC, based out of Columbia, Maryland, and we are looking forward to doing a very next generation project. I'm not going to take a lot of time because I know there are a lot of voices to be heard today. I did just want to share that we are endeavoring to do something very different. We know that there is housing that is needed nationally. Certainly Baltimore is no different. And we are certainly expecting that we can create housing that is accessible financially, health-wise, and certainly is environmentally performing. So we proposed this Tivoli Eco Village with the idea that if you're going to build next generation housing, it should be accessible to everyday people. These are not expensive homes that we're building. These are many of you have been hearing the term missing middle sort of housing. This is that type of housing. So it is modest. We don't have the ability to build these very large lots. So that therefore you will see the thinner, longer urban lots that you may typically see. But we were also charged with creating green space and making sure that we can produce space that is going to be usable for all parts of the community and the surrounding community residents that live in the Coldstream, Homestead, Montebello area. So we thank you for your consideration. We certainly appreciate any feedback you can give us. We do take it seriously, see if we can put it to good use. And with that, I'll hand that over to Ms. Hecker.
Certainly Ms. Hecker could do this too. Could you just follow up on the ownership question that Commissioner McCoach had?
HOA portion?
Yeah, the comment.
Sure, I can handle it.
Please, either one, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a question we get often. Yes, we are proposing to establish an HOA entity. Certainly, if you're going to have an eco-village, you don't want it to be an eco-village in year one and then not in the subsequent years. So we want the HOA to be available to set some standards, to be able to make sure that those standards are being adhered to, as well as to give advice for how residents can best utilize their properties, whether that be to produce food, whether that be to generate more energy, or whether that be to create more green space that's usable in their community. But the HOA will be managing those common space areas to make sure that that can be done effectively over time.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Following along those lines, I'm curious about the infrastructure and whether, that's, I guess residents will have choices in terms of energy providers, perhaps, or is it all a single system that these 100 homes are tied to?
Yeah, that is actually part of the ongoing negotiations we're having with BG&E now. The intent is that all of the residents there may end up being part of like a community solar project. That is a very good possibility. And in doing so, that one entity would help them to both, expand their energy efficiency and uses. We're also talking to BG&E about the idea of what is the best way to interconnect with a microgrid like this, because we do have opportunities to really not only generate energy, but store energy. And then how that energy flows in and out of the grid is something that we're currently talking about now. But we have some smart people around it and looking forward to seeing some of their answers.
So as developer, your job is to help people move into these affordable homes and live happy, productive lives. It's a good thing. You're going to sell these. Is there an entity, is there a position that you take beyond the point where 100 homes are sold where you're still helping to manage particularly the energy solutions?
Yeah, so what we ended up doing, microgrids are developed in a number of different ways. So I should consider and tell you that everyone knows the one best way to do it. It's sort of a recipe based on the circumstances. And in this particular case, the idea of establishing a microgrid does mean that when someone buys a home, they are becoming part of a larger collective.
Right.
And so we want to give them guidance and advice, but they do have the flexibility of they still have to be able to work with BG&E. They still have to look at the kind of bill they would have. Our goal is to help them to do that more efficiently and to help them to see their progress along the way. You'd like to know if you're doing well with that or not so well, and there's areas where you can improve. So that'll all be a part of that scenario.
Yeah, there will be a point in time where you want to turn over a fully functioning community and this this community energy solution.
That's right.
But it shouldn't be too soon.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
going to need some nurturing on your
Oh,
part.
yeah, we'll be holding the hands of the project for quite some time. And you know, I do want to say this, that we do see this as a national model for urban renewal, for urban redevelopment. There are a lot of cities and around the country that could use a larger scale, a massive scale, to be able to redevelop housing. And so we want to be able to do that without changing the dynamic of the neighborhood, without forcing residents who've been there for generations to feel like they have to leave. So we think this is something that can be incorporated into any community, but we'd love the fact that we could start it here in Baltimore.
Just, it's funny you went there because I was going to ask you to go back a step, and you just kind of touched on it a little bit. The company and your story and your history, and is this the first project like this that you've done? I know we're early generally in the whole enterprise, but could you just talk for a moment about that?
I've been doing affordable housing for about 25 years now. We've been doing apartment buildings as well as single-family homes. We have built 3, now going on 4 net zero energy homes, and we're currently completing a net zero energy apartment building on North Capitol Street in DC. So this will be the first net zero energy community. It'll be sort of taking all the things we've done with individual homes as well as what we've done on the energy side. I'm a former board member with the U.S. Green Building Council for 8 years. So this is sort of all those things that when we sit around the table and talked about what we hope to do one day, this is an example of actually putting our foot on the gas and actually doing it.
Is it your first Baltimore project?
This is our first Baltimore project, yes. Others in Maryland and D.C., but first in the city.
And is it because of the elements we're talking about here, which are unusual, is the financing structure overly complicated or made more complicated, or is it
It
just
always
conventional?
is. No, it's not overly complicated. We've been really, really fortunate that both the state, the federal, and our federal government has provided infrastructure dollars. We're very fortunate that I see Mark Washington over there being nice and calm. We've been very fortunate that we've been able to get support at various levels. Councilmember Ramos and others have really been supportive and giving us guidance. So I think when someone asked me, is the financing complicated? To me, they're always complicated, but it's not unusually complicated, I guess is my response. We're not seeing anything that gives us pause.
I guess I know the financing is always complicated. Are there elements of it that relate specifically to the green building, that you've had to solve for or otherwise address?
Well, on the federal side, the infrastructure dollars do allow us, you can't take a brand new home and put it into 1960s and 1970s built infrastructure. Mm-hmm. It's a warranty nightmare, it's a maintenance nightmare, it's a headache for the city. So the ability to be able to sort of rip out the old guts of the infrastructure and put in new water, new sewer, new utilities, and then to attach those to the new homes is critical in the federal funds. And we have $500,000 from the state of Maryland. All of those funds jointly kind of help us to do that. The big thing now is not whether or not we can build it. The question that everyone's going to be asking is whether or not they will all sell. And in the current market, that is always the challenge. So we want to be very careful about the product we put on the street. We want to make sure it's a product, I like to use the word accessible, meaning it's accessible to anyone who's looking to buy a home. But we also want to make sure that it's producing the kind of energy performance that an eco-village should have. And that's not just energy, that is also health, that is also your ability to socialize with your neighbor in peace and comfort. So we look at it in a very holistic manner.
And last question, did you say what the expected sales price range will be?
We haven't fully decided yet, but we are trying to find entry-level houses that are in that 300 to 325,000 range. And so it's not easy. As prices are going up, but we're trying our hardest to keep it there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for the gentleman before we hear from Ms. Hecker? Okay, stand by though.
Sure.
Ms. Hecker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Caroline Hecker, Rosenberg, Martin, Greenberg. On behalf of the applicant, I'm joined by my colleague, Drew Tilden. Just very briefly, we're excited to be part of the first PUD that's being done under the new code. We're happy to be the guinea pigs.
We'll get back to that.
Yeah. So we look forward to your feedback. I did want to just very briefly touch on the 3 items that Ms. Audette mentioned that the commission may want to consider. I think the idea about including, standards or sizes for decks and for the carports is great idea. Let's do that. In terms of the idea of an expiration date or a schedule, we are acquiring these properties under an LDA with the city, which is close to being finalized. And so I think what we can do is build a schedule and that mirrors what's going to be in the LDA because the city is going to require us to have some timelines in there with, hopefully a little bit of cushion to make sure it all works on time. But happy to answer any other questions. I know there's some other folks here who want to speak.
Just on that narrow point, the code, at least the section I'm looking at, has baked into it a 2-year expiration period, section 13502. Approved PUD and final development plan automatically expire 2 years after the date of approval if a building permit has not been issued or the installation of required infrastructure has not begun. Obviously, we never use this section because the PUDs the new PUD language is throughout it's brand new. And then the Planning Commission may extend the time for expiration of an approved PUD and final development plan on written request for good cause shown with public hearing, taking into account certain standards. So I don't know if, is that not address the question that we're talking about? Expiration?
I mean, correct me if I'm, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, our concern is more that once it's built, we don't need to see it again, right? So once it's done.
Like a sunset date.
Yes, it can expire and kind of go quietly into the.
Yours is a fail to start.
No, I didn't understand that. So you were talking about on the back end.
Yeah, so we have the front end that's baked into the code, and then there would be a back end that would kind of let this continue to be a community without our oversight.
Right, because as I recall, one of the accumulated problems with PUDs was that the planning department felt like it had to monitor all these PUDs that existed, and anytime I'm just saying this for explication, and that anytime someone wanted to do something that happened to be in a PUD, it went through all these heightened approvals that weren't necessarily necessary in the rest of the non-PUD world. Is that?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So questions for Ms. Hecker from the commission? Yes, sir, Mr. Vice Chair.
This is a technical question. You may want to take it, although I'm sure you'll have the answer. So I understand the zoning relief that's needed. The underlying zoning is R6, right? So I understand the relief that's needed for this design. But is there no other zoning category that would allow this design? It doesn't seem exceptional.
I would say that the creation of the Muse is pretty unique, as well as the infrastructure needs for the microgrid. So I think those are also aspects of this that are unique.
Are the infrastructure needs a zoning issue?
Yes, because of the required setbacks.
It drives the layout of the homes, the site.
There are huge amounts of variances required otherwise, which is why I suggested that they consider a PUD to streamline needing individual variances for virtually all of the properties.
Let's go back. You got a variance chart somewhere in the materials. I think it was in the slides as well. There you go.
Yeah. So that's fine. That's great. My point there, I guess, would just be if we see a future of building more projects like this, unless we plan on doing every project via PUD, we should try to get in front of those as zoning updates. Thank you.
Yeah, since I was going to wait till after we heard from Mr. Washington, but I just want to echo what the Vice Chair just said. the project's great, and everybody knows this project's been cooking for a long time, and it's great to see it moving along. And it's novel, and I firmly believe we should try new stuff. So it's great in every respect. My questions are more about the relationship of the project to the code. And I mean, we don't want to chase one particular project with the zoning code, which is, I guess, what PUDs are for. On the other hand, we were trying to get away from PUDs. So we do need to keep a close eye on why do we need, I mean, I know why mathematically, but conceptually, why do we need this kind of relief for something that really is not, while it's novel, is not really, it's not sort of a, when you look at it, it makes sense, it's well-planned, and so on. So that, I just think we need to think that through, and maybe that's for the Planning Commission staff to think about, and at the end of the day, if there's some sort of an approach that we can take. I mean, if this is going to become a type of development that takes hold, we might be able to have its own zoning category, it might be able to have a floating zone type category where it's out there without painting a particular area in the city, but we can get it when we need it, and thereby avoid the whole PUD approach, which we've been trying at least to move away from. But congratulations, and thank you for making me read the PUD code, which I wasn't sure I'd ever have to read again. So I'll ask Councilwoman, do you want to go first? And then Mr. Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. I can't tell you how excited I am for this development. It is so cool. And let me just say that the community has been extremely patient, more than patient. So we want to get this started yesterday. Last week, actually. I mean, it's really in that category of we're really excited about this, and the developer has been great with engaging the community. Again, this was the community's vision. This wasn't a developer saying, we're going to do this. This was the community saying, we are going to remove this blight and be able to bring in new housing. It has really galvanized some rehab all around the area. This is really amazing. And I'm so happy to be able to have a pilot of this net zero as well. There is ARPA funding. It has been slow because we did not have the money for the infrastructure. So we're very grateful for the ARPA funding to be able to help us with this. The PUD, I think, is important because we, like you said, this is probably the first of many, and so we may need to have these discussions around what that looks like. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're doing it right, and so having the step of the PUD is important. I will say we need to do a better job, and I'll include myself in this, but the planning department, DHCD, we have to do a better job of explaining all this to the residents, because you'll hear from the residents that, there was not a discussion about why a PUD versus not. There was not a discussion around setbacks or whatever, or not. And maybe Mark can be a little bit more clear on that. But I think that zoning is complicated. I just had a very headache conversation about a bill, one of my bills. And so we all just have to do better about translating, the zoning speak to English so that it's very clear how we're trying to do this. But the PUD, in this case, will allow us to do what the community has envisioned. And if we didn't do that, then we'd have to do all these variances for the 150 units. So that'd be 150 variants. That's crazy. That doesn't work even from a capacity standpoint for all of you in the planning department. So doing this in a comprehensive way through the PUD is exactly what we need to do. We just need to be able to make sure that everybody's on the same page as to what this means. So I'm in favor of it. I want to make sure that we get this done, and we'll be continuing to monitor. And when we break ground, you all will be invited to the big party. Thank you.
Thanks. I think, Councilwoman, we all know how hard you've been working on this and how important it is.
And my predecessor too,
Yeah,
so this
right,
is a big deal,
right.
yeah.
Look, before I ask Mr. Washington to come up, Ms. Odette, one thing I wanted to make sure everybody understood, since we are talking about process, which is a good point, was a little bit unclear to me in the code. Can you do this is how we got here, but can we do the where we go from here part as well, including the bill? There's not been a bill introduced yet, correct?
That was my question, actually, because I said, why are we doing this in Planning Commission when we don't have a bill yet?
I
So
think,
my understanding was that we have to come to you first for at least some initial feedback before a bill is drafted and introduced.
there's a point in the code.
Then you're going to get it again.
Yeah, no, I know. And the reason it's a tiny bit confusing to me, and maybe I misread it, is there's a point where it says something about, if a bill has been introduced or if a bill has not been introduced. So it wasn't clear to me if it was two alternate paths or whether there's only one path. So could you just clarify for the commission what and for everybody else?
Sure, I can take that one. So for the history of plan unit developments in the city, a lot of them going back decades, the way PUDs were designed and handled kind of varied decade to decade. In recent decades, they had been a large area of land, a massive amount of potential development was approved. Usually the first phase would be developed and shown, and then we'll get to the rest of it later. Some of those took years to get to. And so then when those later plans came up, neighborhood changed, new residents came in, and they're like, what is this thing? So our intent was twofold. Number one, a lot of the PUDs were created because there were a lot of problems with the old zoning code. Number one, fix the problems of the code, don't Band-Aid it through PUDs. And then number two, try and make PUDs more of a tactical exercise, not this generational thing. Call your shot, take your shot. So because it was going to move somewhat quickly, we also wanted to provide the professional input from the planning staff for the council so they can consider that on the front end instead of introducing whatever may have been brought up and then it comes here and now it's a scramble to fight to change that in a public venue. We'd rather have those discussions at the front end, make recommendations here, let the applicant and council members digest that, and then hopefully the intro copy is a much cleaner copy that sails through. So that's kind of the shift in how we had hoped that PUDs would go. And I guess we mostly got the zoning code right if it's 7 years later and this is the first one.
So according to the code, this will come back to us in a much more advanced PUD master plan form.
After introduction.
And Bill.
Right, well, the bit after introduction. And the reason, since we're talking about it, regarding the master plan, there's a section that says that our final determination regarding a proposed PUD master plan must be included in our report to the council if the PUD is the subject of a proposed legislative authorization, which is a bill that has already been introduced, or retained by the Planning Commission for at least 12 months, and if the plan unit development becomes a subject of a legislative authorization, a bill. So it just seems like it was written for flexibility, which is fine, but what is the intent? Are we gonna now have a bill and then a master plan under that bill? I'm just trying to get the launch sequence straight.
The preferred option is what we're doing today. We bring you a concept plan, get your initial feedback, then it gets introduced and comes back in its more finalized form. We are not legislators, nor is the Planning Commission. If a council member introduces legislation, we can't stop that. That is their prerogative. So in that case, we would do it the old way, where it's been introduced and referred to us, and we deal with it when we get it. So that's the kind of split that you're seeing. But the preferred option is what we're doing today in giving our best input on the concept plan, letting them spend the effort to finalize, introduce, and then it'll come back in final form.
And I would rather have a baked product when I introduce it as opposed to something that then we have to amend and didn't have process. Because after this, I want to have an in-depth discussion with the community. I would have rather had the discussion with the community first, but that's not how it all went, about what this actually means and how those setbacks work and all of that, so that people understand why we're doing it this way. And then, your feedback, and then I'll be introducing the bill. So and obviously working with the developer too. So I prefer having a baked product, is what I'm saying.
I apologize in a way because our feedback, at least mine, has been more in the process than the project.
This is actually very helpful, I think, too. So I appreciate your questions. Yeah.
Thanks. Are there other questions for the councilwoman or the staff on this? And then we'll hear from Mr. Washington if anybody else who wants to be heard. Mr. McCoach.
Sure, I have a question, actually. So as a PUD, these would all be, thank you. These individual parcels would all be considered an R6. But when the PUD sunsets, which I like that notion very much, because PUDs are great if you have a campus environment and multiple mixed uses, but once these 100 homes are built, it's pretty much fixed. But then with the PUD sunsetting, do all those individual owners then basically live on non-conforming sort of parcels? You know, they're in R6, but they're non-conforming? Is that a burden that you want to have be permanently attached to the parcels?
The friction would be pretty low unless they're going to build something. I mean, if toward, and one of the other.
Well, let me just interrupt and say, we have not had this conversation internally about the expiration date.
Yeah.
I have not decided whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. I actually right now, don't think an expiration date is a good idea.
Maybe I'll just.
But we have not had that discussion.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, and why we suggest this is, again, because we have PUDs that were built for neighborhoods that were built out 30 years ago, and the PUDs are still there, and I'm still getting deck permits for them. Okay, so, just saying. It's an option. One of the other significant changes in the current PUD requirements that did not exist under the prior zoning code was that there is a target schedule of development to keep the project moving, right? So we don't want to build one phase, wait a long time, and maybe something comes out later. But to directly answer your question, if a sunset date were used to make the self-cleaning, the PUD goes away, all the properties go back to by right condition, yes, they may be non-conforming, like a lot of other properties in the city. And unless you do anything to change the structure, build an addition, you'd never know it.
No, right.
And so the relative friction is pretty low. The thing that we would want to avoid is if only half the neighborhood had been built, then absolutely extending that sunset date would be appropriate and desirable.
Well,
And again, I don't know that I would favor an expiration date because I do think that these are exceptions to the rule in terms of what we're doing in the neighborhood. So we might want to keep it that way. So it's just, as you see, we still got some things to work on, but your opinion and your thoughts on this are helpful.
and since we are talking about overlapping land use controls, you mentioned that there's also a URP. So maybe you can just spend a moment on that. And I don't recall, I mean, I don't think I've read this URP, and I don't recall, oftentimes there'll be some statement somewhere about primacy, which prevails if there's a conflict, et cetera. So do we know what the situation is here, and what is the interaction of the URP?
So there are design standards for new construction.
I'm sorry?
The
Design standards.
The urban renewal plan includes design standards, which include design standards for new construction as well as alterations. And is Marie in the audience?
She was here earlier.
Come on over. When I reviewed it quickly, it looked like generally what they're proposing meets those standards. And based off of my read, the new construction here would need to meet the urban renewal plan.
It would need to meet it.
Yes.
But it wouldn't, but it's not changing, what you've shown us is would meet.
It's consistent,
would meet it.
yes.
You're just saying it would apply, but we're looking to meet it.
So to answer your primacy question, typically the PUD controls, because it's the more recent and the more specific, we do have some cases where a specific statement to that effect is
Yeah.
included in the PUD ordinance. That's a good idea. I didn't remember that until
Yeah, we
you
would probably
mentioned it.
refer to the urban renewal plan in the ordinance relative to some of this. Yeah.
Yeah, you may just decide to do exactly what Mr. Tiso described. I guess I'm just flagging it more than anything.
No,
to
no,
make
I
sure that
appreciate,
we
this
sort
is
of-
super helpful in terms of when we get ready for the PUD
Yeah.
draft, what are the things that we need to consider? But the urban renewal plan is very important to the community, so it's not something we're going to get rid of.
that wasn't-
And
right.
that, the design standards are extremely important. And so, that also allows us with consistency with the rest of the neighborhood too, so that we're not building like blue siding in a
Yeah.
neighborhood that is all brick. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to blue siding. I actually have that on my house, but I'm just saying.
For the record, Councilwoman Ramos is not opposed to blue siding.
Yeah, and the urban renewal plan has more to do with the design standards than the bulk and yard. So I think that they would work in tandem versus oppositionally.
Well, if you're looking for comments from us, one of the comments would be, please make sure that you synthesize all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
This is
Shall we hear from Mr. Washington? Is there anybody
Sure,
else?
if you don't have anything for me, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Washington, please.
Let's have another resident with us as well.
Of course.
Thank you all. I want to give Marie Sue, who is a resident that lives in close proximity to the Tivoli redevelopment area, an opportunity to speak from a resident's point of view.
Thank you. Please give us your name again for the record. And-
Marizu Onyanaka.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all. Oh, Onyenaka. All right. So, nice to meet you all. We're really excited about this Eco Village. It's been a long time coming. I think 2018, I was looking at, RFPs that the city had put out. So here we are in 2025. We're still talking about it. We haven't broken ground. I will say, one thing around the zoning stuff, the community really worked hard to get to R6 for various reasons, including the fact that our neighborhood is full of really, really big buildings, and people tend to want to look at them and be like, let's make them all multi-units, which doesn't really work well in terms of balance. We're fine with having people.
I'm sorry, maybe just going to look closer.
Okay. Doesn't really work well for balance. So we've been very intentional, worked with the previous council person to get the R6 in our community. It's not something that happened by mistake. It was by design, just because we have really large buildings. I own one. It is a multi-unit. I am a landlord, but I still understand that balance is incredibly important in our community. And as we looked at even the design of this, we are looking at a balance around density in the community. When you shove a bunch of people together with very little parking and they have to rub elbows too close together, it becomes a problem. And we want people to have a quality of life. And, it's just part of a larger plan that we have been implementing over the last, I've been in the community 18 years. I know I don't look that old, but I am, to really improve the quality of life, including greening and treeing and other things that we're looking at around the community that's going to be built. So, all of that to say that there is a lot of hard work happening in our community and a lot of support at the roots on the ground. Like, I am working on a greening project right now for trees, because I want us to be very comfortable, even those who don't have, central air and in our old buildings. So these are the things that we're looking at. And so just so that you know that we're very actively engaged.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marizu. I just want to follow up.
I'm sorry, Mr. Washington, just for the record, your name.
Oh, Mark Washington. I just want to follow up on a point that the council person made and Marizu alluded to. And it goes back to the length of time that the community has been working on this project. A journey of 1,000 miles is still 1,000 miles. And we feel as though we've been on this journey for more than 1,000 miles. They both spoke to, and the representative from the planning department spoke to the community's desire to decrease density. And the reason why that's been brought up on multiple occasions here is that we feel as though we've been swimming upstream. We've been going through multiple iterations of elected representatives and planning, all with their different points of view of what a city should look like. But that city is comprised of individual neighborhoods, and what makes up that city is the quality of life that exists within those individual neighborhoods, and making certain that a community like Coldstream Homestead Montebello, which is in the center of beautiful Lake Montebello, adjacent to Clifton Park, a golf course with City College High School, and of course, Morgan moving to the area, maintains its suburban, urban feel is very, very important to us. So when we look at those conversations that are floating around City Hall and other city agencies about increasing density, we wonder if that's the smartest approach for our neighborhood and in particular the city as a whole. I will say that right now we are experiencing tumultuous times on a federal level. And so we have real concerns about the length of time that this project is taking. We are in fear right now as to whether or not the administration in DC will come and try to claw back money that was awarded to this project years ago because it hasn't been spent yet. The fact of the matter that this project continues to languish is something of grave concern to those residents, some of which we've lost along the way on this journey. I cannot stress enough how serious it is to get this project across the finish line. With regards to Urban Green LLC, we like working with Mr. James and their development team. As a matter of fact, we're looking and hopefully to work with Urban Green LLC on some future projects in Chum. Keep in mind, what we're talking about here is a complete transformation of the community. And all this has to work in tandem. You spoke of synthesizing the PUD with the urban renewal plan. We're also in discussions as a community about whether or not it makes sense for us to look at a covenant to apply to that area to lay it on top. Because those protections that we thought we had initially with the urban renewal plan have proven to be flawed to such a degree that there have been things that have been allowed to happen within the community that don't necessarily comport with the community's desires, wishes, or overall development objectives. So I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to address you all, and I appreciate it. Let's get this project over the finish line. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for your longstanding continued leadership in Chum. That's great. And, in a way, this process is sort of doing what it's supposed to do, isn't it? Which is to surface these issues early on and put some things on the, when it comes back to us, there are some specific things I think you'll know we want to look at, see some answers and resolution to these questions. So thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to be heard? Okay. Thank you. Anybody else on the commission? Any other remaining questions before we move on? There's no action required on this item. And Mr. Tiso, you'll be, or maybe Ms. Audette will be documenting and communicating this.
I was just whispering, we're going to have to figure out a new format because there's not a typical approval memo, so you just read my mind.
I'm sorry?
You just read my mind. I was just whispering, going, we're going to have to create a new form of documentation for this.
Well, I don't think that this is, I don't think this is intended to be the beginning of a whole new suite of PUDs, but that's the conversation for another day. Okay, thank you. Councilwoman, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Okay, we'll move on to the next item then. That would be item number seven. No, seven was postponed, correct? So item for the record, item 7 was postponed. It was posted as such. We'll move to item number 8.
Item number 8 is City Council Bill number 25-0053, a rezoning for 4001 East Baltimore Street in the 1st Councilmatic District. Justin Walker will present.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Justin Walker, and I'll be presenting this afternoon on City Council Bill number 25-0053 concerning the rezoning of 4001 East Baltimore Street. The applicant is applying to change the zoning from the I-2 zoning district to the IMU Industrial Mixed Use 1 zoning district. The petitioner is Chase Hoffberger. On behalf of the owner, Staffo Contracting, this is in the East Planning District, which is represented by the community planner, Amani Jasper. So taking a look at the map here, we see 4001 East Baltimore Street. It is a mid-block lot, triangle shaped, and it contains about 1/3 of an acre. This is in the Baltimore Highlands neighborhood statistical area on the east side of the city, right there by the intersection of East Baltimore Street and South Haven Street. Going over to the satellite view, one thing that's important to notice is the wide variety of uses that do surround this site. Just to the west, we have the Highland Town Shopping Center, which is a C3 commercial zone. Across the street, of course, we see the industrial uses, as well as across South Haven Street, we have other IMU zone properties, which we'll look more closely at in just a moment. Again, taking a look from the north, you see these different uses, including residential across Lombard Street, just a block away from the site. So going to the street view, just some background on the building. It was built around 1900 and has a long industrial history. For decades, the Felco Packing Company produced textile bags there that were used for agriculture. Since that time, the industrial use has been scaled down. Currently, the site is used by the owner as a storage and office space regarding a contract they have with the State Highway Administration, and that contract is scheduled to conclude in 2026, at which point in time the owners are going to be looking to redevelop the property, which is why they are pursuing the zoning change to the industrial mixed-use district. So just to go through the approval standards, as we know for a rezone, one of two standards must be met, either a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood or a mistake in the existing zoning classification. In this case, we do believe that the neighborhood is undergoing significant change and is in a period of transition that meets the standards for this rezone. Yeah, goes in and out. So moving on and talking about the change that this neighborhood has seen in recent years. So we can take a look at the pre-2017 zoning, and what you can notice is how widespread that M3 zone is, which at the time was the highest degree of industrial zone. It covers the subject property, and you notice it also covered the Highland Town Village Shopping Center and the properties across South Haven Street. If we go to next slide. It's not. Okay, so now we can see the current transform zoning, and you can see that that industrial use has come down in intensity a bit and in how widespread it is, with the Highland Town Shopping Center being rezoned to C3, and just across South Haven Street, we can see a block of properties that have gone to the IMU2 zoning, and we have seen a reuse occur in this block of properties. I know there was an Urban Axes and a brewery that have opened, which are, of course, the classic reuses of older industrial properties for commercial use. So this neighborhood has certainly seen a change in the uses just across the street, and as well as up and down the South Haven Street corridor, especially going south towards the waterfront into Brewers Hill. Over the last decade, we have seen multiple developments of multifamily properties, as well as some row house development along that corridor. So we're certainly seeing the transition of this area away from the higher intensity industrial uses that have dominated its history and towards the more neighborhood scale, lower intensity commercial and residential uses, which is precisely what the IMU district was designed to facilitate. And just looking through some more of our required findings here to quickly run through the population changes. From 2010 to 2020, the census found that the neighborhood statistical area grew by about 400 people. So this is a area of the city that is gaining population. Of course, the public facilities are widespread as they were able to serve the industrial site. Just about half a mile down East Lombard Street, you run into I-895, so it is very accessible by vehicle. Also, Lombard Street has MDOT MTA bus stop serving the Orange Line, so the public transportation accessibility is there. And as I mentioned, the ongoing and some that's already occurred development is moving away from that higher intensity industrial uses towards lower intensity uses. And we'll dive in a little deeper in just a moment, but this does align with the city's comprehensive master plan. Again, the existing use of the property is a storage and office yard, which could be continued in the industrial mixed-use zone. In fact, the first floor of properties in that zone are required to be at least 60% non-residential. So we will continue to allow such uses on the site. And again, the trend of development is just moving away from the heavier industrial uses. So taking a look at the general land use plan here, we can see that corner of East Baltimore and South Haven Street has those cross lines, which if you look to the legend, represent the mixed use predominantly industrial zoning classification, which does align with the proposed rezoning to allow the mixed use, but still allow some of those lower intensity industrial and commercial uses to continue. And going beyond the city's comprehensive plan and general land use plan, this is taken directly from the Baltimore Highlands Community Plan. And one of the goals, goal 3, is to ensure stability and access for renters in the neighborhood. And one of the strategies under this goal is to identify sites for multifamily development, which is not allowed under the current zoning, but would be allowed under the IMU zoning. And you can see the goals, again, directly from the plan here, is to minimize the displacement of existing owners, renters, and businesses. Well, in this case, of course, we know the business has an expiration date on their current use as their contract with State Highway ends. And also the goal to use either vacant or underutilized buildings. Certainly in a neighborhood that is growing, storage for a contractor is not necessarily the highest and best use of the site. And in this circle here, if you look down at the bottom right, that purple square includes the site of 4001 East Baltimore, and that has been identified in this community plan as a potential development site for multifamily purposes. So the community plan directly addresses this site as a possibility for that development, which this change to IMU1 zoning would allow to occur. Just running through a few more of the required findings. As I just mentioned, this conforms to not only the city comprehensive plan, but the area master plan, which spells out the needs of the community, And addressing the needs of the city and of the particular neighborhood, again, the first floor would have to maintain 60% non-residential uses. So the employment opportunities will be maintained, while also allowing for the necessary residential units to be brought online, as is identified directly in the community's plan. So what better place to find the needs of the particular community than the plan they drafted themselves, and that was passed in 2023. So that is a recently adopted plan. And just to go into the equity of this will support the current trajectory of the neighborhood, which is moving away from those long-standing intense industrial uses and towards more of a mix of neighborhood scale uses. Again, this will bring more units online, or allow development that could bring more units online to allow opportunities for renters to live in the neighborhood. Of course, as I mentioned, this is just proximal to the C3 zoned Highlandtown Shopping Center, so it would improve walkability with such residential development, and of course the mixed-use nature of the zoning would allow employment opportunities to be maintained. As far as notification is concerned, in addition to the required posting, the Highlandtown Community Association provided a letter of support. A quick note on that letter, it does say that the community is supporting the I-2 rezone to C3. That was because at the time the applicant had proposed rezoning to C3. The applicant changed that to prefer IMU1, but the community didn't provide a new letter of support. But the development project that was presented to the community is not changing. So just a note on that discrepancy. And with that, staff is recommending approval of this rezone, as we believe that the standards are met for there to be a significant change in the community that would meet the required standards for a rezoning. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about this.
Mr. Walker, just on the last point about the community letter.
Yes.
So I understand that you're saying that the project that was part of the discussion for the rezoning has not changed, but the underlying zoning district has changed.
Yes.
We haven't heard from the community directly on the question of whether they would equally support IMU1 versus C3?
The applicant is here.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Better address that
And while I'm sort of on that point, what was C3 considered? And obviously it was, well, must have been if that's what you, and rejected for some reason. Could you comment on that? We can ask the applicant as well, but you probably know the answer.
I'm not exactly sure why the applicant changed course on that, but.
That was me. So the general land use plan would support a change to IMU 1, but C3 would not be in the designated options. So in lieu of a negative recommendation from us, they were able to find that IMU 1 worked for the same development, and they were content with that. And so good that they talked to us before introduction, so they just shifted it on introduction, and that's where we are.
Yeah, I think applicants and their representatives are going to have to get used to the idea that there's a land use map out there that will affect the staff's and maybe the commission's outcome. Can you put up the map that shows the surrounding zoning? I'm not sure which one that is, but I'll tell you when you get there.
Is there? That's the current zoning.
Yeah, I guess that's.
And the purple there is I2.
Yeah. So I guess the one question, well, let's wait to hear from others first. Are there questions from the commission for the staff? Let's start with that. Okay, is there anybody here who wishes to testify? I see the applicant waving in the back. Please give us your name and affiliation and for the record.
Sure, thanks for having us. My name is Chase Hoffberger. I'm here with Mike Ost from Sappho Contractors, representative of the property owner. And so we're happy to answer any questions that you might have, Mr. Laria, to answer the questions you've already posed. We did run the change of plan past the Highlandtown Community Association. This, we sent an email to Bobby Jo Sims, articulated the reason why, and she said that's no problem with us. Obviously, we had been in communication with Mark Parker throughout this process. Originally, it was C3, and then conversion to IM.
Is that an exchange of emails or just an oral?
It's an exchange of emails.
Would you just supply those to the staff?
I can,
So
yes.
we have them?
In fact, Justin might already have them just based on the emails, but I'll make sure that's the case. And as you can see, part of the reason why we wanted C3 was just to sort of fill out that crescent shape with the Highlandtown Shopping Center. The uses that are permitted and approvable as conditional uses in C3 and IMU1 are very similar, but obviously there is a bit of difference in terms of the intent of the buildings. And after consultation with Mr. Tiso, we certainly agree that IMU1 is more fitting for a property like this, which is an old industrial building. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions about the work.
So you are equally happy or even happier with the IMU1 at the end of the day?
I'd say we're just as happy.
Just as happy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the differences are minimal in terms of the permitted uses, and there are expectations about ground floor use. 60% can't be residential or parking, but as you can see from the development plan, that conforms to the plans, and so there's no...
The reason I say this, and we're trying to all learn sort of the slightly new rules, is, my understanding is that obviously we're not doing the rezoning anyway, the council is.
Right.
But that we're not bound by the land use plan. It may well affect the staff's recommendation because the staff recommended mixed use for that zone, and it wouldn't be surprising, therefore, if you brought them a project that, that was commercial, they would say, well, wait a second. So, but I'm just saying this more for the commission's benefit, so that because there's going to be, I think, now another data point in all of these discussions is what does the land use plan say? And I just wanted to be clear that we are not, and certainly the council is not bound by the land use plan. It is informative and may even be persuasive. In this case, not an issue because you're fine with the IMU1, but I just for purposes of framing these discussions.
Well, thank you. And as a general point too, it's notable that the land use plan sometimes can be predicated upon a mistake. I mean, if you're rezoning a property due to a mistake, then the land use plan probably has a mistake in it, as we've seen in previous rezonings already.
Right.
But that's not the case here.
Okay, well, other questions, and then I do have one more, but other commissioners' questions of the applicant? Do you wish to be heard, sir, or is Mr. Hoffberger doing okay?
All right? Okay.
Great. Okay. Any other questions? Again, slightly broader question is maybe it's to the staff, and we don't have to deal with it in any depth today, is does this mean that we should be looking at the rest of this sea of purple industrial zoning to consider? I mean, I forget how maybe we have the land use plan slide. Does the land use plan show a substantial preference in the staff's work for?
So
You know what I'm asking, right? I'm just
I
trying
think so.
Yeah.
So the hatched areas goes to that mixed use predominantly industrial, which is the IMU. So kind of going up, that north line along the east side of Haven Street. So I think we've looked at it a bit, but it can always be refined if needed.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Haven Street corridor with a whole bunch of low-rise industrial opportunities for industrial mixed use, right? That's why
It's also a truck route for the port, and they were very concerned about losing that. So the IMU category met that need.
Gotcha. Okay.
And more importantly, why this plan is so important is because we had several residential rezonings along Haven Street that started a domino effect. And so now we're able to better anchor that for protecting that corridor.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, so there are no other questions? Okay. We're ready for a motion then? Is there a motion to adopt the findings as contained in the staff report and to approve the staff's recommendation?
Motion to adopt and approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
We'll get the relevant information about the change.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next item, Mr. Executive Secretary.
Next item is City Council Bill number 25-0055, a zoning conditional use parking lot as a principal use with variances at 701 Mura Street in the 12th Councilmatic District. Brandon Canoy will present. All right, there are two bills, companion bills. City Council Bill number 25-0056, zoning conditional use parking lot with principal use with variances for 702 Mura Street on the 12th Councilmatic District.
Yes, so this is a fun one. We've got two council bills in one presentation, hopefully to speed you guys along, because the questions will likely be the same for both. At least I hope. But if not, happy to answer them. Mr. Executive Secretary handled the request fairly well. The petitioner is present. The property is currently owned by the mayor of City Council and is part of a redevelopment of the interior block lots, which you will see shortly. It is in the Eastern Planning District, and Imani Jasper is the community planner for the area. This is a chunk of property that is 2 blocks south of the Greenmount Cemetery. It is currently developed with some row homes, and a number of them are in a fairly sad state. A portion of them are proposed to be demolished to allow for construction of the north property parking lot. The two old buildings that you can see there on the south property, those were previously demolished, not as part of this plan. It was just a completely separate building were coming down, and they are now 2 vacant lots. Oh, actually, I went backwards. Sorry about that. Here you can kind of see that the lot to the south is completely greened over now, mostly just grass, no real trees or anything there. The properties to the north, you can see through to the ground floor, through the roof, so they're obviously not in the best condition. And then you can see that there's a bit of a facade, a few trees growing through the roof there, and then this is looking south. You can see a little better there the placement of the proposed lots within the block. This is the proposed and approved site plan for the north parking lot. It will include 6 parking stalls, one of which was called out to be ADA accessible. We'll make sure that that actually gets installed. And there are also 2 truncated dome ramps to cross the little 10-foot concrete alley there to make sure that any pedestrians know they're crossing through a car area. And then same on the south side. This is back in angled parking on the south side for 4 vehicles. And then there's also a truncated dome crossing of the continuation of the alley down there. The Planning Commission can impose any reasonable conditions on the properties so long as they see fit, anything that's necessary to authorize and allow the use in the highest and best use for the property. If the commission applies any conditions and the applicant fails to conform to them, then it's considered a violation, just like any other violation of the code. These are the approval standards noted in the code for any conditional use. All it really does is list the required findings as they are applicable for each different item. If the committee finds that one of these would be violated, then it would be appropriate to apply a condition. And then the bottom section there is limited criteria for denying. That's mostly just noting that this is more of a judicial review as opposed to a legislative action. So if it meets the standards as noted in the code, it's generally considered kosher.
Can I just interrupt you for, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to be clear, I mean, just for the evaluation criteria is must consider the following where appropriate, which means you do not need to consider all of those, you only need to consider them where appropriate.
Correct.
And it's important to make that distinction because there was actually litigation over the question of in a situation where, whether it was 14 at the time or whatever, where are the findings on the 14? And the answer was, well, they're only findings on, I'll make it up to 6, because those are the ones that were considered to be appropriate. And it's important to make that distinction. So I just want to be clear, to the extent we're going to keep seeing these, that the set of evaluation criteria as a guide, et cetera, as you can read it. And on the other hand, the subsection B at the bottom, findings, are required findings that must be made by really the council. The commission is not listed there, but as a practical matter, we're using the same standards. But that's the ultimate standard. So it's important to keep that distinction, I think, clear in terms of what's a required finding versus what's sort of a factor to be considered.
Yes.
Back to you.
Thank you for that clarification for folks.
That's what I'm here for.
Then at the very bottom of this page, it also notes what the approval standards are for variances, which are going to be requested as a part of this item. We will get to that here in just a second because it got complicated, but we hopefully have made it fairly easy for y'all. Whoop. Don't want to lose that. We find that this project will provide some equity considerations as it will allow some off-street parking and supplement the revitalization effort for these interior block properties, which are fairly common in Baltimore. They're a great historical item, and it's something we want to make sure that we don't lose with the changing demands of a residential market. It will also reduce the parking demand on Mira Street, which will allow for better pedestrian access and utilization of the space. So that way you're not wandering around cars trying to use your narrow inner block street. You're actually able to use it, meet with your neighbors and community on that fun stuff. And the community association is Rebuild Johnson Square. They have been notified of this action. I know the project team has been in fairly regular contact with them. And with that, we will jump to the fun stuff. So after a secondary review, we found that the requested variances got a little mixed up in the bill language. So the applicant has proposed the following amendments to request variances from the allowed impervious surface for each of the properties. The percentages are listed there for each of you to review. The south property is the 61.66% and the north property is the 81.4% coverage, as opposed to the 65% lot coverage, which is permitted by right. And then there were requested variances for an interior side yard and rear yard encroachment. However, after further code review, we determined that both the parking area and the required screening fence are permitted encroachments, and therefore a variance will not be necessary.
So, Mr. Coonan, does that does that mean that the only variances requested are A and B?
Correct.
Okay, so it's a complete substitution of one set of variances for another. Okay.
Yes. So instead of an encroachment variance, it is an impervious surface variance. And this was determined after we had made our recommendation in the report, which was approve and adopt. So now we are recommending consideration of these amendments to the board. I will field any other questions y'all have.
Let me ask a few to get started. Is there, well, let's go back. It's a conditional use because, fill in that blank for me.
So conditional uses are something that is generally considered permitted within the city of Baltimore. However, given the potential impact that conditional uses can have, it requires an additional level of consideration both by staff, planning commission, and city council to determine that there is no additional impact proposed by the project.
And what is I'm leading the witness here, but what is the use that is in question here, and what is the zone?
Gotcha. So the use that is requested is a principal use parking lot, and I will double check. It is obviously a residential zone, but I want to double check and make sure. It's either R6 or R7, but I can double check that.
Okay, so the predicate for this is that they're proposing a principal use off-street parking in a whatever zone, which is a conditional use and therefore needs conditional use approval. And it happens to come along with a few variances, which started out being one set of variances, now it's another set of variances. Is there any, does the applicant, and they can speak for themselves certainly, or you can if you know the answer, do they own other property? And is this just someone who, like, how are these spaces expected to be used? Are they in connection with and linked to other homes, or is it just a standalone parking lot in the middle of the block?
Gotcha. So I did double check. I misspoke. It is R8 zoning, still a conditional use. The applicant is requesting this parking to service the interior row houses in the block. They own most of them or are under a redevelopment agreement for most of them. Some are owned outright by the other property owners in the area, but the majority are proposed to be redeveloped by a single owner, which would be the future owner of this parking lot. Oh, yes, they are pairing up and consolidating portions of the houses, but the applicant may also be able to. Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Sorry, I was just saying there's permits that are in currently. So if we go back to the property outline.
Oh, to consolidate two lots.
Yeah, go back one more, it's about easier. So you can see how most of them have been consolidated two into one, just to, show that it's more generous size, but because the lots are small and the alleys are too narrow, they can't park it, so hence the parking lots.
So is there a redevelopment plan? We'll have the applicant come up if that's best, but I'm just trying to understand the overall approach here, because what I'm trying to avoid is, let's take some vacant land and put some off-street parking in the middle of a block, untethered to any sort of, and I'm sure that's not the case, but I'd like to understand what's actually going on here.
Yep, and the applicants can speak to it directly, but a day or two ago, I was signing off on permits for the renovations of
Okay,
these.
well then we can certainly wait. Are there other questions for the staff? Robin?
This
Commissioner
might
Allen?
be better directed to the owner or attorney, but based on what you just said, that it's intended for interior residents or residents of the interior properties, will there be costs connected with parking on these lots?
That is a good question. I'll turn it over to the applicant for that one. I know it did come up whether or not this would initially be just public parking or resident parking. It was eventually determined that it would be resident parking for these folks here. But
And then
first,
how would that be policed, for lack of a better term?
We happy to answer that.
so I'll thank the applicant for saving my bacon there.
Sorry.
Any other questions for staff? And then we'll have the applicant come up to answer these questions. Okay. So the applicant's attorney, please come up, introduce yourself for the record. And you can, I suppose, start off answering the questions you've heard, and we'll see what else people have.
Yeah, absolutely. So Drew Tilden, Rosenberg Martin Greenberg. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, and I'm joined today by Mr. Arjun Hosekar. We are here on behalf of Rebuild Metro. I'm sure that most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with Rebuild's work in the area, but this is part of a $100 million redevelopment, large-scale redevelopment of the Johnston Square community. We were recently here for the teacher housing project, which is just one block to the north of this. This is the Mura Street redevelopment. They actually just had a groundbreaking ceremony yesterday. But the remaining blocks on this lot, the 700 block of Mura Street, are going to be redeveloped for use as 10 townhomes. So there are going to be 10 parking spaces that are going to serve each specific townhome. As addressed, we kind of went back and forth on how exactly we would address the off-street parking. Arjun can come up and speak to exactly what their plan is on how to maintain that. But this isn't just us sticking sticking to random parking lots in the middle of Baltimore City. I did also just want to clarify the variances. I'm not sure if it is in your files, but I submitted a memorandum that prevents findings of fact and conclusions of law, and that outlines the conditional use and variance relief that we're requesting for this. So we are doing the parking lot conditional use. It's a minimum lot area variance, and then we are also requesting these maximum impervious surface variances, and that is the one that's not currently in the bill. I'll be frank, we're more than happy to accept additional variance relief. So that's not the key amendment that we're asking for and removing those other two, but we did want to make sure to flag the fact that the fence and the off-street parking are permitted encroachments, and so we don't actually need that variance relief. So with that, do you want to come and just discuss sort of?
I'm sorry, Ms. Tilden.
Oh, yeah,
Could you just go back to that last? So are you saying that the variances that the staff explained are the correct variances now? Or
So-
are you saying it's different?
Yeah, so I think that there was a bit of confusion only because there is one variance that's in the bill right now that we do need to maintain. That's the minimum lot area variance. We don't want to get rid of that. We are saying that we do not need the setback variances that we have in there right now. It's an
That's not exactly what we heard a moment ago, correct? I mean, it's okay. I'm just
No,
trying to get it straight.
that's why I wanted to clarify. We are asking for a conditional use, a minimum lot area variance, and a maximum impervious surface variance for each lot. And they are outlined specifically on page 2 of the memorandum I submitted.
Okay. Did the applicant himself want to say anything in addition?
Yeah, happy to just give context on the project if
Please
that
come up.
helps.
Yeah.
So, good afternoon. Arjun Hasakaria from Rebuild Metro. So for context, the block has 23 vacant properties on it right now, 3 of which are the 3 lots that we're going to be demolishing and requesting for the variance for the 6-space parking lot, and 2 of which are the vacant lots that will be the 4-space parking lot. Of the remaining 18 properties, will result with 10 new townhomes. And essentially, the reason behind providing these off-street parking solutions were to not add impact on on-street parking. The current street, being a smaller interior street, can accommodate about 16 to 18 cars on the street. Our approach to the project was essentially, with adding 10 new houses, was not to put any impact on the street with these 10 new houses, but instead allow it for existing residents. There are only 3 existing legacy residents on this block who have been there for multiple decades. So that was the approach to this. The project is a largely state-funded project as well. So happy to answer any questions if you might have. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Allen, yes?
So then, if there are townhouses, I assume, first of all, how many townhouses?
Will result with 10 new houses.
Okay, so then a parking space would convey with each unit.
Correct. So to answer your question that you posed previously, the intention right now is to have a space deeded to every one of the new houses that will be created, and essentially also create a homeowners association that will take care of maintenance and the taxes on these 2 lots as well.
Other questions? I'm familiar with the project generally, obviously familiar with what Rebuild is doing, and it seems like a great idea and a good solution to the off-street parking. I just don't want to create a situation where we're just putting parking lots in the middle of blocks. And you've adequately explained what you're doing here and why. I think that the thing you just mentioned at the end, which was that they would be deeded, I would like to make that a condition of our recommendations. The council ultimately has to decide, because I'd just be concerned that somehow in the future, someone, I mean, I don't even, it's not totally clear to me, frankly, how those lots are going to be owned, and I don't think we need to get into it today. I think what I would like us to be able to say is, if the lots are intended to be effective, it's almost as if those lots are a residential parking lot for a 10 townhome community, except they happen to be at the end of the block and they happen to be at the moment in separate ownership and so on. I'd just like to tidy all of that up in some way so that going forward, it's clear that that's basically intended to be off-street parking for this small townhome community. And if there's an HOA, more the better. That's up to you. It's not up to us. So does that make sense? Is that consistent with what you're suggesting?
I think so. I'll just add one more point to what you first mentioned. Just again, it happens to be, like you said, it happens to be at the end of the block. 2 out of those 3 structures at the north of the block are in the worst condition on the block, and also end up being shells like that end up being the most expensive to rehab. So they also just happen to lend to the idea of.
So the rest of the homes on Mura are being rehabs, not new construction. You're rehabbing those?
Yeah, they're all rehabs.
Oh,
Yeah, they're all rehabs. There are no ground up new construction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so that would be I didn't want to impose, it's up to the council ultimately, but. Ms. Tilden?
We're still.
That's it.
Okay. So what I'd ask for, if someone's willing to make it, is a motion to adopt the findings and approve both. Can we do them both together, Mr. Tiso? Is that going to, for this item, with the added proviso that some provision be made to connect the ownership of the houses to the right to park on the lot. I don't want to say by deed, whatever we come up with. And maybe you can tidy that up by the time it gets to the council, and there'll be a specific proposal the council can adopt in the actual ordinance. And we're here just to provide some guidance and structure to that idea.
Yeah, thank you.
So, sure. Is that, will someone make a motion to that effect? Did I mess that up too much for you guys?
Kind of a complicated motion.
Well, here, I'll try it again.
Motion to adopt the findings and approve the recommendation with the condition, as the chairman described, related to the parking spaces being deeded to the residences.
Ms. Tilden, we're just trying to work this out in a way that makes sense, that's all. Please feel free.
Yes,
Go ahead.
I do want to just make sure it doesn't include the phrase deed, as you mentioned before, just so that we can make sure that it works with whatever structure that we have. But I would prefer perhaps attributable to the residents on the 700 block of Mira Street in those homes.
I'm okay with that if the vice chair is. The council, I think we're just trying to give the council, alert them to this issue, and I think between now and then, you're going to have to find a way to satisfy that issue, assuming the council agrees with the commission.
Absolutely.
Clarification, 'cause
Yeah.
it wasn't clear until we
Yeah.
asked further questions.
Mr. Stevenson, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So Mr. Stevens hopefully has made a clearer motion than the chair. Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in
Is-
favor?
Is that
Mr.
for
McCoach?
both properties, or is that for both city council bills, one of which is 701 and the other is 7?
Yes.
Yes.
We're treating them together.
Robin Allen,
Approve as stated.
Christine Griffin,
Approved.
Claudia Jolin,
Approve.
Doug McCoach.
Approve.
Justin Williams, Jane Lewis, Eric Stevenson.
Approve.
John Laria.
Approve.
Approved online.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
All right, the final item on the agenda today is the adoption of the Robert W. Coleman Inspire Plan in the 7th Councilmatic District. Pat McMahon and Yafa Weiss will present. Tariq and Tariq Bolden will present.
It loses connection. I don't know why.
There you are, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so as Director Ryan Ryer mentioned, we're here about the adoption of the Robert W. Coleman Inspire Plan. Oops, I guess we've got an older version of this. So my name's Patrick McMahon. I'm one of the Inspire planners here at the department. Yafa Weiss.
Yafa Weiss, I'm the other Inspire planner and was assisted in this process.
Hello, everyone. Tariq Bolden. I'm the Western District Planner from the Community Planning Division.
And so we're going to go over with just an overview of the Inspire program. We were here a couple meetings ago to speak about the Inspire program, so that should be just review. And then Tariq's going to talk a little bit about the Mondawmin community and the area where the planning took place, as well as the process. I'm going to review the plan goals and recommendations, and then Yafa will speak to the next steps. Sorry. No.
Cool.
Yafa's.
Thanks. I'll kick us off. So just a quick overview of the Inspire program. Inspire is an acronym for Investing in Neighborhoods and Schools to Promote Improvement, Revitalization, and Excellence. The program prioritizes the areas surrounding the new 21st Century School building projects to capitalize on the improvement to the facilities to then use that to motivate additional community and infrastructure development in the quarter to half mile radius surrounding the school building. The scope for each Inspire plan stands on 3 main feet. The first are primary walking route improvements. These are roadways that have been dedicated as essential nexuses of connection between the school, student homes, and other resources in the communities where the schools exist and receive treatment for updates. The second is the area-specific recommendations report, which we are presenting today for adoption as a core component of the total Inspire plan, and a community improvement project with funding available up to $100,000 to kickstart development in these Inspire areas. Robert W. Coleman Elementary School is located in West Baltimore in the Mondawmin community. The Inspire planning process launched in May of 2019 with some initial community outreach. However, due to things outside of the department's control, including the COVID-19 pandemic and staff turnover, the plan needed to be shelved temporarily, but renewed community engagement kicked off in 2023 with participation from the Greater Mondawmin Coordinating Council and the surrounding community.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the actual neighborhood that this is in. This is actually a really beautiful neighborhood in Mondawmin. It's been through a lot of changes over the last few years. It's a very tight-knit community. It's an interesting community in that on the west side, it is bordered by Coppin State University. To the north, you have Gwen Falls Parkway and Mondawmin Mall. To the south, you have West North Avenue. And to the east, you have the bordering along Pennsylvania Avenue, Reisterstown Road. So as you can imagine, anyone who's familiar with that there is a lot of different entities and a lot of strong presence in that community. We've been working with this community on this project. Next slide. You have the forces from the development of the Coppin State University as it starts to grow, and there are pressures on there, as well as different things going on in Mondawmin Mall. To the north, as there's a lot of activity and redevelopment on that end. There's one of the largest transit hubs in the city of Baltimore. And then there's, of course, with the activities happening along West North Avenue and the new energy there. In the middle of all of that is this community of Mondawmin, this tight-knit community of people that have been here for years. It is a very small community, the total population around 3,000 people in our caption area. Currently at this time, the median household is a bit lower than what you see in the rest of the district. And as a result, this community has seen its share of vacancies and issues over time. Part of the planning process here would be to help uplift this and bring this to the next level. Right now, well, thank you. So as this is a greater map of the quarter-mile radius around the R.W. Coleman Elementary School. As you can see, it actually shares some of its planning area with the newly renovated Frederick Douglass High School that'll be opening next year. And as you can see, you also have the William S. Barr School, which is fantastic, which was the original R.W. Coleman School till about 1981, I believe. And then they moved into the new building, the 21st Century building. So it's quite a community. It's very tight-knit. I say that again because the participation and the people who have come out in support of this project has been excellent, despite the challenges that have come. Patrick's going to go into some of the recommendations that we have. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to get into just a brief overview of, as Yafa said, there's been a lot of stops and starts throughout this process. It started back in 2019, where a number of our community members were really excited about it. Unfortunately, COVID hit, and with the hit of COVID, there was not only changes in the way that we operated, but there were also changes in staff. As staff turnover happened, as new people came in and out, this process started. Again, R.W. Comey Community Organization and members of the GMCC stuck with the process. They never let it go. They never let us forget about it. And they made sure that this pushed through. And then just as recently as, unfortunately, this is cut off, earlier this year, we had our final recommendation meeting in March of 2025 to go over what has been done over the last, at this point, 4 to 5 years of this process, and then where we are today. Patrick's gonna go over some of our recommendations and really get into some of the details and some of the highlights of what we're proposing to do and uplift this community. Patrick?
So there are 5 different key goals for the Robert W. Coleman Inspire Plan. The first one focuses on housing, on the vacant and abandoned housing within the community, on promoting housing within the community, other pieces like that. The second is focused on transportation issues, really around sort of connection to the surrounding area and safe traffic calming in the community. The third is really about the recreation and health and opportunities both in the neighborhood and around the neighborhood, including the new Parkview Recreation Center that's in the process of being constructed just a little way from the neighborhood. And then the fourth is really about the community managed open spaces and about those areas and public art in the community. And the last is around public safety and sort of crime issues. So we're going to talk about, we're not going to go through all 9 strategies and all 20 recommended actions, but going to go through 5 sort of example recommended actions. And for each of these, we've worked with the nonprofit and community partners in the area, as well as the various city agencies around making sure that everyone was on board with these actions and that we're all working towards implementing all of these. And today's definitely not the end of that process. And so Yafa mentioned earlier, one of the key pieces of the Inspire program is community project, and the project that so for one of the blocks, I think it's the 2100 block of Herbert Street, that block's been entirely demolished and is now sort of the DHCD is in the process of taking ownership of all of the different properties, and this is going to be managed as a community managed open space. And so we're working with the community to identify sort of the appropriate ways to make investments around this. One of the pieces that we've talked about so far is a mural either at or adjacent to this community managed open space. We're still working on refining some of those pieces, but the community's identified that they want these sort of community spaces to be where we focus our investments in. This is also adjacent to the Penn North Links plan. This is a program that's been around for almost a decade, and one of the things we're going to be doing is a lot of the community members have participated in the discussions around this plan, and we're going to go through and evaluate sort of what has been implemented, what are the impacts of that planning process, and the arts district that surrounds there. Additionally, the Quiet Place is another community managed open space in an inner block area that the community is interested in making additional enhancements to, and we've been talking with other partners, including the West North Avenue Development Authority, about the possibilities of making investments in this area. We've also been working with MTA, the Maryland Transit Administration. The community has expressed an interest in having additional bus shelters at some of the bus stops because a lot of kids, a lot of other people that are waiting at those bus stops. And so we've since worked with MTA to identify which of the stop locations meet MTA shelter criteria and which ones don't, and working with them to try and push for implementation of shelters at the ones that do meet their criteria. So I'm going to let Yafa speak about the next steps.
Pending adoption of the recommendation report that the commission's been provided, we will take the opportunity to reach out to stakeholders and key community members who have participated in the planning process to let them know that adoption has happened, and to express gratitude for their participation in the process. Our department website is undergoing developments, but we will make sure it is posted publicly on the website for public consumption. And the next step would be sort of a transformation of the initial steering committee into one focused on implementation of the plan and proceeding with sourcing funding and prioritizing goals for over the next several years for this area, so the plan stays fresh. And our recommendation for the commission today is please adopt this plan. Thank you so much.
A couple quick context questions, then commission will have whatever questions it might have. Could you just remind me, how many Inspire plans are there or will there be?
There will be a total of 24 different Inspire plans. 16 have been approved by the Planning Commission so far. This is the first of the 8 remaining to be adopted, and we're currently starting or in the process of most of those right now.
Okay. And 2/3 of the way. 2/3. And once adopted, I mean, obviously you have implementation steps, which once adopted, you will proceed, as you've described, to do those, which require all different sorts of implementation steps. I presume also the plan becomes one of the plans that we look, every time it says in the code or elsewhere, conformity with plans, this becomes one of the tier of plans that you would review in order to advise the commission or anybody else, the council, about conformity. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I just want to I'm just trying to understand the fundamental purpose of it, other than they told us we had to do it, because obviously that's not very gratifying.
Yeah, no, this would be a guiding document
Yeah.
for the community moving forward. And in some communities, there are lots of overlapping plans. In other places, the Inspire plans are maybe the only plans for that area.
So this is a city promulgated plan as opposed to a community plan. So yes, we would hold ourselves to this.
And as we work with other agencies, when they're putting together their capital improvement plan requests, we're encouraging them to look to these plans as a way of guiding those CIP requests.
Okay. Other members of the commission, questions? Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, guys. Great plan. My question is about the implementation. And so on the goals, the goal strategies and actions have action words like market homeownership assistance. Who does that?
If you go a couple more pages beyond that, I think to page 53, there's an implementation table that goes through, and for each recommendation, it lists the partners and the time frame for those. And so we've reached out to every one of those partners to make sure that they're on board with being a partner of that. And so for some of those, it's entirely community-led. So for that first sort of marketing homeownership assistance, that's really Healthy Neighborhoods Incorporated, Neighborhood Housing Services in coordination with the neighborhood, really focusing on those pieces, whereas there are other pieces that are entirely city agency driven.
Okay. Great, thank you. And building on the chairman's question, considering the number of Inspire plans that we've already seen, what's sort of the life cycle of revisiting the plans, for review or updates?
In honesty, there's been some inconsistency with it. In the more recent plans that have crossed the threshold of commission approval, our team has been working to keep those plans alive and active, and when possible to cluster them into more coordinated efforts. For example, we're doing that right now with Medfield Heights, which was very recently passed, and the Robert Poole building, which was approved several years ago, but that share the Falls Road corridor. So, we are curating a better approach to implementation upon the adoption of these plans.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Other questions from the commission? I have one last question, which sort of links, ironically, our earliest topic today and our latest. How, if at all, does the plan address the Greenway Trail link between Druid Hill Park and Leakin Park, which on Gwinsford, which goes sort of right through the plan?
One of the interesting things I find about this plan is it was expressed to us through the community about the community assets that Druid Hill Park, some of the other green spaces, Parkview Rec, and some of the others that are to the east of this neighborhood. And it became apparent to us through the community that they wanted greater strengthening of the links along Glens Falls Parkway, as well as others. So we're looking into, as part of that implementation, it was called out as a recommendation in the plan, but then we have to figure out how exactly we can incorporate that specifically. There was a lot earlier in this process. There was a potential raise grant along the Glens Falls Parkway around Mondawmin Mall. The status of that is still in question, but using some of those transportation improvements, we saw that as an opportunity to implement some of that green space connection, but we're still figuring out how that could all work together.
Well, let me be more specific. There has been for however long a Greenway Trail network plan, which includes a connection between Druid Hill Park and Leakin Park. And we've just done what is an absolutely outstanding planning document. I want to say I read it. It's great. It's well done. It makes perfect sense to me. But there appears to be no mention of that whatsoever. And I'm just wondering why that is.
That is a very tricky question in that particular part of town. We have approached it. We have spoken to members of the community about what can be done to improve the connections along Glens Falls Parkway. Unfortunately, Glens Falls Parkway extends well beyond our planning area, and as a result, there was greater sensitivity in this plan to what would be needed outside of our planning area. We really focused on our quarter to a half-mile radius that is there. So that particular aspect of it, we would have to involve a much greater connection. It didn't make any sense to speak about what is in our section without really engaging the longer distance on that.
Yeah. Well, as people will hear from me, I mean, I think we always ask these questions about coordination of plans, right? And do they coordinate and don't they coordinate? So you have something that's been adopted in the city, and now we've done a plan that ignores it. And I don't think that's right. So I'll just say that for the record, only for this reason, I'll be voting no on approving this plan, in hopes that people will take seriously the fact that when we say we're going to do something, we do it, and it makes its way into later planning documents, and we don't just ignore it. So that's what I'll be doing. Please don't take it personally. It is a great planning document, but I think it fails in that respect, and there's no explanation for it.
I think DOT is looking at alternative alignments for this section of the.
Then the plan respectfully should have said, there is discussion about this, there's complicated community issues, there's questions about alignments, there's questions about what the ultimate solution would be, and so we did not paint a green line on the map in this place. But to simply ignore it is wrong. So I've said my piece. Okay, anybody else, any other questions? All those?
We do have a number of community members.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Here.
I apologize.
I don't know if they want to speak or, but they definitely came to make sure that this moved.
I'm very sorry.
Got over the finish line. No.
No, sorry are the folks from the community who would like to be heard?
Well, if y'all think there's any reason to speak to the Greenway Trail, I guess.
Does you speak to whatever you feel is important? Sure.
Should I come up?
Yes, please.
Eli or Ms. Adeline, you can speak to whatever you want to or not.
Please name and affiliation if you would.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Eli Lopat, and I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Mondawmin Coordinating Council. And I'm very grateful to Tariq, Patrick, and team for all the work that they've put in, along with Eli Poussin and other folks before that on this Inspire plan. I've been on staff for just over 2 years myself, so it sort of coincided as the relaunch of the project has taken place. Our board president, Ms. Adeline Hutchinson, who lives right on Windsor Avenue across from Robert W. Coleman School, is here in the audience. She's been consulted continuously throughout this process, as have other community members. We're very excited for all of the recommendations that are put forward in the plan. And I guess I hadn't, noted the flag that you mentioned, Mr. Chair, on the absence of recommendations along with that Greenway Trail. As I think you're aware, it is a very complicated community issue with a number of our residents with some great concerns around streetscaping involving Gwynns Falls. So I appreciate the hesitancy with, working to put forward a plan that we're actually put into place with including something like that has become such a community political hot button in our area. We obviously would support some way in connecting those parks as well. But yeah, just adding that piece that we're happy for the plan and have been consulted extensively.
Thank you very much. And thank you, obviously, for your role in getting this done. It is, in every other respect, an excellent plan.
Sure. Last name Lopatin, Lopatin.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Ladies, anybody else wish to speak?
I apologize. I have a community meeting I need to. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks for your work.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adeline Hutchison, and I serve as the president of the Greater Mondawmin Coordinating Council, and also the president of the affiliate organization, which is incorporated within Greater Mondawmin, which is Robert W. Coleman. This plan was brought to the attention of the members of the Robert Coleman community for some time now. And first of all, the adoption of the plan is one of the things that helped to revitalize the school. The school itself was adopted under this plan, I believe, right? Was adopted under this plan and has been revitalized. But I could see it as revitalization in an area that truly needs it, because I don't know how old the residents are in some of these districts, but within this particular district, most of the residents that have been there for any long period of time are in the 50s already. 50, 60, no, they 60s and above, I'll put it that way. And the revitalization of this area is truly something that we look forward to, because the Renata plan is also coming along in this area from Hilton Street down to Park Avenue. All of that is 2 blocks over, which incorporates us. And by incorporating us, that means that it will help us make a change in our community. So I think approval of this plan will be something that will improve the economics of a community that hasn't been touched in quite a while. And since Freddie Gray's uprising, that was in this community as well. So now we're at a point where we have some vacant housing, not totally dilapidated, but in an area where improvement is needed. And I thought this Inspire plan that they had and the city had put together was an upgrade and also an improvement for a community. But you said you're not going to approve it. So I guess my talking and whatever else is still not going to make you improve it, because you said that there's something that you're not going to. Is there something about it that the community should have done that we did not do that would have made this more productive or more inspiring for it to be approved?
Ma'am, I'm only speaking for myself. I'm one of 9 votes.
Right.
The vote hasn't been taken. It's quite possible the plan will be approved. I'm simply registering my own concern for the reason that I described. And it's unfortunate. It's an excellent plan. I'm not suggesting the plan shouldn't be approved in other respects, but that's just my feeling about that one aspect of it. So we'll see what other commissioners have to say, and it's entirely up to the 9 members, however many are here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Thank you for all your work in Greater Mondawmin.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? Okay. Is there a motion? We can have discussion on the motion after it's made. I assume a motion to approve is in order, and then we can debate the motion. Is there a motion to approve the plan?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Now, any further discussion before we take a vote?
No.
Okay. Let's do a roll call for this.
Robin Allen,
Approve.
John Bullock, is he on?
He's online and votes approve.
Christine Griffin,
Approve.
Claudio Jolin,
Approve.
Doug McCoach. Approve. Jane Lewis, Justin Williams.
Approve.
Eric Stevenson.
Approve.
And John Lario.
Disapprove. With respect.
And I would just like to say, and I fully understand your reservation, and the point that you raised was a valid and important one. And it wouldn't have been raised if not for your intimate involvement in that specific plan that wasn't mentioned in this one. And so, I mean, not only do we want to aspire to that, but we want to come up with some kind of system, because I suspect that it was perhaps not intentional that that reference was left out of the plan, more so that we've got so many overlapping plans out there now, and no good system to really, compare them and integrate them with each other. So thanks for raising that.
Sure. And I'll just say one last thing for the record. I mean, I'm familiar with what's going on in Greater Mondawmin. It's an extraordinary community. And ma'am, I'm very familiar with your work. I actually had the privilege of working on the conversion in my professional life, on the conversion of the Target store to the center. It is, yes, ma'am. It is an extraordinary community, and as I said, I think that it has tremendous assets. The plan will capitalize on those assets, and nothing I'm saying should be taken to denigrate the community or the plan overall. But I just feel like this is something that's important, and it's a point I chose to raise. And thank you very much. Okay. Is that the agenda? Yep. Okay. So if there's no other business, I'll accept a motion to adjourn, recognizing that the commission itself will remain for an administrative session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, nay? No opposition? We're adjourned. Thank you very, very much.